"Sir, you're under arrest for trespassing," the officer states as he handcuffs 83-year-old staff. Sergeant Robert Hayes outside the Veterans Memorial he helped dedicate 40 years ago. The crowd of onlookers watches in shocked silence as the frail Black Marine is led away, his Purple Heart ribbon barely visible on his worn jacket. None of them knowing that tomorrow a 3-star general will rise from his seat in that very courtroom to salute this forgotten hero. What happens next will leave you speechless and restore your faith in justice. If stories like this matter to you, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone being judged before their true story was known? Stay with us because this story will change how you see the heroes walking. Among us, Robert Hayes had been coming to Memorial Park every Tuesday morning for 3 years now. The 83-year-old man moved slowly, his weathered hands gripping a simple wooden cane as he made his way to the granite memorial wall. His routine was simple and quiet. He would sit on the bench, read the names carved in stone, and spend an hour in silence before walking home. This Tuesday started like any other, until a group of teenagers decided to make it their playground. First bottle crashed. Against the memorial at 9:30 a.m., Robert looked up from his spot on the bench as 4 young men laughed and threw another piece of trash at the wall. One of them had a speaker blasting music so loud it hurt his ears. "Excuse me," Robert called out, his voice shaky but clear. "This is a memorial. People come here to remember fallen soldiers." The tallest teenager turned around with a smirk. "Oh look, Grandpa thinks he owns the park. What are you going to do about it, old man?" Robert stood up slowly, his cane helping him. "Balance. I'm asking you nicely to show some respect. These names on this wall, these were real people who died serving our country." The teenager laughed even louder. "Died for what? Some stupid war nobody cares about anymore?" His friends joined in, making jokes and throwing more trash. One of them kicked over the small American flag that stood near the memorial. That flag meant something to Robert. He had helped place it there himself, along with the other veterans. When this memorial was first built, seeing it lying in the dirt made something inside him snap. "Sir, please pick up that flag," Robert said, his voice getting stronger. "Make me," the teenager shot back. "What's some old guy going to do? Call the cops." He stepped closer to Robert, towering over the elderly man who probably never even served. Just another old fool trying to act tough. The crowd was growing now. People walking their dogs stopped to watch. Mothers pushing strollers slowed down to see what was happening. A few people had their phones out, recording the scene. Robert felt all eyes on him. His heart was beating fast, but not from fear. It was from anger and pain. These kids had no idea what that memorial meant. They had no idea what those names represented. "I did serve," Robert said quietly. "I served 3 tours in Korea. Lost good friends whose names are on walls just like this home. Korea." The teenager laughed so hard he had to hold his stomach. That it was like 100 years ago. Nobody cares about that ancient history. GRAMPS. His friends started chanting ancient history. Ancient history while dancing around the fallen flag. More people gathered, creating a circle around the confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable, but nobody stepped forward to help. Robert's hands were shaking now, but he kept his voice steady. "Those men died so you could have the freedom to stand here and make fun of them. The least you can do is show some respect." "Respect this," the teenager said, and deliberately stepped on the flag with his dirty sneaker. The crowd gasped. Even some of the teenager's friends looked uncomfortable now. But the ringleader wasn't done. He picked up the flag and pretended to wipe his nose with it. "There you go, old man. There's your precious flag. Maybe now you'll mind your own business and leave us alone." Robert felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart, but something deeper. His pride, maybe. Or his faith in the younger generation. He had fought for this country, bled for it, watched his friends die for it, and now he was watching kids treat it like garbage. "Stop it," Robert said, louder this time. "Just stop it, or what?" The teenager stepped closer, pushing his face near Robert's. "You'll fight me. You can barely stand up straight, old man. Why don't you just go home and watch your old war movies?" That's when Robert did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He grabbed the flag from the teenager's hand. "Me that," he said firmly. The teenager was shocked for a second, then got angry. "Hey!" He tried to grab the flag back, but Robert held on tight. The two of them struggled for a moment, an 83-year-old man against a teenager half his age. "Let go, you crazy old fool," the teenager shouted, pulling harder. Robert didn't let go. He couldn't let go. That flag represented everything he had fought for, everything his friends had died for, even if it meant getting hurt. He wasn't going to let this kid disrespect it anymore. The struggle lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like forever. Robert's cane fell to the ground. He stumbled, trying to keep his balance while holding on to the flag. The teenager kept pulling, getting more and more angry. Finally, Robert's grip loosened. Not because he wanted to give up, but because his 83-year-old hands just couldn't hold on anymore. The teenager yanked the flag away so hard that Robert fell backward, landing hard on the concrete. The crowd was silent now. Even the teenager looked shocked at what had happened. An old man was lying on the ground, breathing hard, with scrapes on his hands from the fall. Robert tried to get up, but his body wouldn't cooperate. His hip hurt, his hands were bleeding, and he felt dizzy. But he kept looking at that flag and the teenager's hand. "Sir, are you okay?" A woman from the crowd finally asked, kneeling down next to Robert. The teenager suddenly realized how bad this looked. There were phones recording, people staring, and an elderly man bleeding on the ground. "This is his fault," the teenager said quickly. "He attacked me. You all saw it. The old guy grabbed me first." Some people in the crowd started murmuring. They had seen the struggle, but from different angles. Some thought Robert had started it by grabbing the flag. Others had seen the teenager step on the flag first. "He's lying," Robert said weakly, still trying to sit up. "He was destroying the memorial. I just asked him to stop." But the teenager was louder and younger, and he had friends backing him up. "This old man assaulted me. He's crazy. Someone should call the police." And someone did call the police. Within 5 minutes, 2 officers arrived at the scene. They saw an elderly man on the ground, bleeding, and a group of agitated teenagers. They saw a crowd of people with phones out, all talking at once, all telling different versions of the story. The lead officer, Sergeant Martinez, looked at the scene and made a quick decision based on what he saw. There was an elderly man who had clearly been in some kind of fight, and there were witnesses saying he had grabbed someone first. "Sir," the officer said to Robert, who was now sitting up against the bench, "I need you to stand up slowly." "Officer," Robert said, his voice weak but clear, "I was just trying to protect the memorial. These boys were throwing trash at it, stepping on the flag." But Sergeant Martinez had heard this kind of story before. Elderly people sometimes got confused, sometimes saw things that weren't really happening. The teenagers looked like normal kids to him, not troublemakers, "Sir. I'm going to need you to come with us," the officer said. "Several witnesses say you initiated physical contact with this young man." Robert looked around at the crowd. Some people looked sympathetic, but nobody was speaking up for him. The teenagers were all nodding, backing up their friend's story. The truth was getting lost in the confusion. "I'm a veteran," Robert said quietly. "I served my country. I would never hurt anyone unless they were hurting something I swore to protect." The officer softened a little, but he still had a job to do. "I understand that, sir, but right now, I have to follow the law. You're under arrest for assault." As the handcuffs clicked around Robert's wrists, he looked one more time at the memorial wall. The flag was still lying on the ground where the teenager had dropped it. Nobody had bothered to pick it up. The crowd slowly began to break up as the police car drove away. The teenagers left quickly, not wanting to stick around in case more questions were asked. Within an hour, Memorial Park was quiet again, except for the American flag still lying in the dirt next to the memorial wall. Robert spent that night in jail. He sat on the hard bench in his cell, thinking about what had happened. He wasn't angry at the teenagers anymore. Kids were kids, and maybe they just didn't understand. But he was angry at himself for losing control, for making things worse instead of better. The next morning, he was brought to court for his hearing. The courthouse was busy, full of lawyers and defendants and families. Robert sat in the back row, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, still feeling the scrapes on his hands. Judge Patricia Williams looked at the case file. Assault charge against an 83-year-old defendant. She had seen it all in her 20 years on the bench. But this one made her curious. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "the defendant, Robert Hayes." physically assaulted a minor at Memorial Park yesterday. Multiple witnesses saw him grab the victim and engage in a struggle that resulted in property damage and disturbing the peace. The public defender, a young lawyer named James Chen, stood up. "Your Honor, my client is an 83-year-old veteran with no prior criminal record. He was simply trying to protect a war memorial from vandalism." Judge Williams looked at Robert. "Mr. Hayes, can you tell me what happened yesterday?" Robert stood up slowly, his cane helping him balance. "Your Honor, I go to Memorial Park every Tuesday to honor fallen soldiers. Yesterday, some young men were throwing trash at the memorial and stepping on the American flag. I asked them to stop, and when they wouldn't, I tried to save the flag from being destroyed." The prosecutor interrupted. "Your Honor, regardless of the defendant's intentions, he still committed assault. The victim was simply exercising his First Amendment rights." When something unexpected happened, the back door of the courtroom opened and a man in a military dress uniform walked in. He was tall, with silver hair and 3 stars on his shoulders. General Michael Davidson, retired Marine Corps, had heard about the case through his contacts. At the VA, the general walked down the aisle and stopped at the prosecutor's table. "Excuse me, Your Honor, may I approach the bench?" Judge Williams was surprised but nodded. General Davidson walked forward and spoke quietly to the judge for a moment. Then he turned to face the courtroom. "Your Honor," the general said in a voice that commanded attention, "I would like to speak on behalf of Staff Sergeant Robert Hayes." The courtroom went completely silent. Even the prosecutor looked confused. General Davidson continued. "Staff Sergeant Hayes served 3 tours in Korea with the 1st Marine Division. He was awarded the Purple Heart, the Bronze Stars, and the Silver Star for extraordinary heroism in combat. He saved 17 Marines during the Battle of Heartbreak Ridge, carrying wounded men to safety under heavy enemy fire." Robert looked up in shock. He had never told anyone about Heartbreak Ridge, not even his family. How did this general know? General Davidson kept talking. After the war, Staff Sergeant Hayes worked as a civil engineer and helped design and build over 30 veteran memorials. Across the country, including the one at Memorial Park, he has spent 40 years of his life honoring fallen soldiers. The general turned to look directly at Robert. Yesterday, this man saw something he had spent his life protecting being destroyed, and he acted on instinct, the same instinct that saved 17 Marines 60 years ago. Judge Williams was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Robert, then at the general, then at the case file in front of her. "Mr. Hayes," the judge said, "please stand." Robert stood up, leaning on his cane, not sure what was going to happen next, but before Judge Williams could speak, General Davidson did something that no one in that courtroom will ever forget. The 3-star general came to full attention and gave Robert Hayes a perfect military salute. The entire courtroom held its breath. Robert, despite his age and his injuries, straightened his back and returned the salute with shaking hands. General Davidson held the salute for a full 10 seconds, then slowly lowered his arm. "Staff Sergeant Hayes," the general said, "it has been an honor." Judge Williams wiped her eyes and looked at the prosecutor, motioned to dismiss all charges. "This case is closed." As Robert walked out of the courtroom, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just pride, but hope. Hope that maybe there were still people who understood what service meant, what sacrifice looked like, what honor was worth. The teenagers who had caused the trouble never came forward to apologize. But that didn't matter anymore. Was that one person had cared enough to stand up and tell the truth. General Davidson walked with Robert to the courthouse steps. "Staff Sergeant," the general said, "I heard about what happened from a friend at the VA. I had to come see for myself." "Thank you, sir," Robert said. "I thought everyone had forgotten." "Never," the general replied. "Heroes like you are never forgotten. They just sometimes need someone to remind the world who they really are." That afternoon, Robert went back to Memorial Park. Someone had cleaned up the trash and properly placed the American flag back in its stand. He sat on his usual bench and looked at the names on the wall, the same names he had been reading for 3 years. But this time, he didn't just see the names of the dead, he saw the face of a general who remembered what service meant. He saw a judge who understood justice. He saw hope for a country that sometimes forgets its heroes but never stops needing them. Robert Hayes continued his Tuesday visits to Memorial Park until he passed away peacefully 2 years later. At his funeral, General Davidson gave the eulogy and presented the folded flag to Robert's family. The memorial at Memorial Park now has a small plaque next to the American flag. It reads, "In honor of Staff Sergeant Robert Hayes, who served his country in war and in peace, and who never stopped believing that honor is worth defending." Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they're fought in our own neighborhoods, in our own communities, by people who refuse to let the memory of sacrifice be forgotten. Staff Sergeant Robert Hayes fought his last battle at age 83, and he won it not with violence, but with the quiet dignity of a man who never forgot what it meant to serve.